Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome to this special 10-minute church as we gather on Facebook for this special Greeting the Gospel session. This 10-minute church is also going to be available on the website, but it's being recorded particularly with you in mind, watching this either live or later on Facebook. This 10-minute church will be taking place at some point during a time of worship or after some worship, and I hope you've been finding that worship uplifting. I hope you have a sense of joy in your hearts as you worship and give praise to God. In the gospel today, we hear Jesus saying that the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field which someone has found. He hides it again, goes off happy, sells everything he owns and buys the field. I hope you have that deep sense of treasure buried within you, that treasure which is Christ. And knowing that Christ is within you, the Spirit is within you, and it's constantly refreshing you and reviving you. Jesus says again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he finds one of great value, he goes and sells everything he owns and buys it. Again, I hope you really know that pearl of great price, that love of Christ, Jesus, who is Lord. You know, for the past few weeks, we've been hearing lots of parables in the Gospel of Matthew. It started off on the 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time when we heard from chapter 13 that Jesus left the house and sat by the lakeside, and the people all stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables. And he expounded the parable of the sower. And his disciples were asking, why do you talk in parables? And he said, it is to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah. You will listen and listen again, but not understand, see and see again, but not perceive. For the heart of this nation has grown coarse, their ears are dull of hearing, and they have shut their eyes, for fear they should see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their heart, and be converted and be healed by me. Jesus uses parables for a particular reason. Again, we hear in the 16th Sunday of Ordinary Time, there is the parable of the wheat and the darnel, the weeds among the wheat. And Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven being like a mustard seed, or being like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour till it was leavened all the way through. And it says that Jesus would only speak to them in parables. So why is that exactly? I want to share with you a little story. I was thinking about this earlier, and I came across this lovely story, and it's from a book called The Parables of Jesus by a Redemptorist priest called Dennis McBride. Once upon a time, an ancient rabbi was asked why telling stories rather than making statements seemed to be a more effective way of communicating with people. He thought for a while, tilted his head sideways, then scratched his dented face. Once upon a time, he said, it happened that Truth walked down a village street as naked as the day he was born. The villagers were horrified. They ran into their houses, closed and locked their doors, and refused to have anything to do with this walking vulgarity. As Truth left the village, he thought to himself, since he had only himself to think to, why he couldn't get near other people, why they were so frightened of him. He saw Story approaching the village. Story was dressed in fine, colourful clothes. She was a sight for the eyes. Some people said that when she smiled, her face looked as if she had rented the sun. Story greeted Truth and then, keeping custody of the eyes, inquired, "What's the matter with you? Why do you look so sad and disappointed? Tell me what's wrong." Truth said, "Nobody wants me, nobody accepts me. When people see me coming, they run away and hide. But you are always invited into their houses. They love to sit around the fire listening to you. Why does everyone avoid me?" "May I act out of character and be totally frank with you?" Story asked. "Please do, I would appreciate that." "Everyone avoids you because of your nakedness," Story said. "People today are afraid of the naked truth, so they turn away. I'm sorry, truth, but believe me, that's the truth. You live inside your enclosure of clarity, looking out in disapproval at the fog of humanity. You emerge to clear things up, but you have never stepped out into the real world of ambiguity, confusion, and brokenness. Life is untidy, it is arbitrary, and it is too much to stare at for long. Since Adam and Eve, the human story has been one of covering up, and you walk around like some noble exception, feeling no need for anything as common as a fig leaf. Why don't you use a bit of imagination? I'll tell you what, let me make some clothes for you, and then we'll see how people respond." Truth was reluctant to accept his new friend's advice, but he was tired of loneliness and decided to risk it. 2 weeks later, he dressed himself in the clothes Story had made for him. At first, he felt strange and uncomfortable, all covered up. But soon he discovered to his delight that people no longer avoided him, but opened their doors and welcomed him into their houses. Truth and Story became firm friends. Not long after, Truth and Story married. Not too long after that, they had 5 children, whose unusual names are recorded as myth, fable, action, satire, and parable. I really loved that story when I read it. I've had this book on my shelf for a long time and just thought I'd dip into it. And I think I've dipped into other sections, but never actually read the very beginning. Truth and Story marry. Truth on its own is often too blunt and too naked for people to accept. And Jesus recognized that. He was a man of his time. He would have been used to having heard stories being told. And Jesus always wants to put the truth to people, but in a way that they can understand, or as he says, in a way that they might be able to perceive if the Spirit allows them to, if they allow their eyes to be open and their ears to be opened too. So that's why we have such wonderful parables which are subversive. They turn the world upside down. Jesus talks about people who would have seemingly been the righteous ones, who actually turn out to be the opposite. How those who would have been pushed out on the margins are the ones who are really exalted. Think of the rich man and Lazarus. Think of the story of the Good Samaritan. Think of the prodigal son. Think of the younger brother and the older brother. Maybe today, as we consider greeting the gospel and as we give worship and praise to God, give thanks for that great pearl of price, that great pearl of great value, which is ours in Jesus. And let us spend some time just pondering those stories, those parables which Jesus has given to us in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, particularly the Gospel of Matthew, and especially really in the Gospel of Luke, which has those wonderful stories we'd only hear in Luke of the rich man and Lazarus, the Pharisee and the tax collector, the Good Samaritan, the prodigal son. But above all, let's greet the gospel with joy and remember Jesus is Lord.